So exciting.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mimi Lichtenstein, and today I'm here with Richard Beatty, and I am super excited to talk with him because we are going to talk all about hiking Mount Kilimanjaro. Richard, thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure. It's great to always talk to people who want to hear about hiking Kilimanjaro and some of the pitfalls and some of the great things you can do up there to make it a special trip.
Absolutely. And it's definitely not for everybody, but for those people who are very goal oriented, love to have something that's, an athletic accomplishment, it's a great bucket list item. Tell us a little bit I know a little bit about your background, but maybe give us a little synopsis for everyone about how you got to where you are doing these guides up Kilimanjaro.
Well, the short version, as I say, we've done the long version earlier on, but the short version is I landed up in Africa about just over 30 years ago, 1990, in Tanzania, arrived in Tanzania, not really knowing very much about Africa, but having a background in both outdoor education and mountaineering. So Kilimanjaro was an obvious progression. And now here I am, whatever it is, 31 years later, back in the same place, still in the same place, organizing climbs. I don't actually go up myself. What we've done is we've trained some fantastic Tanzanian guides, but I'm going to tell you more about that later.
I'm excited to hear about it. I do want to also throw in that I know that you've worked, I think, on at least 3 continents for Outward Bound.
That's right, yes. Started off in the UK, worked for them there for a number of years. And then in the States, not so many mountains there. I was down in Florida in the swamps. And then finally in Hong Kong. But from Hong Kong, we had a sail training ship. Then we used to sail across to Borneo and the Philippines and China and expeditions to Nepal and places like that.
Okay, so I think we're in good hands. Those people who are like me, who have teenagers and college kids, are very familiar with Outward Bound. And I have several friends who did it also when they were teenagers, and always great things to say. So best
thing you can do with your kids, send them on an Outward Bound course.
I agree with you. I had a daughter who, not on Outward Bound, another trip she was on this summer for a month in Guatemala, and it was an incredible experience. So yeah. I'm obviously a big fan of sending teenagers traveling around the world. All right, let's get started. So Mount Kilimanjaro, you want to give us a little bit, oh, I love these pictures of you, by the way.
I like the one you chose for the flyer, out at the floor.
Well, I look forward to one day sitting there having a cocktail, a martini or a margarita or something with you. Tell us a little bit about where it is. We're looking at a map of Tanzania right now. Where is it, and how does that impact getting there and, hiking up to the top?
Well, so it's in East Africa. So it's, a lot of people not quite sure where Tanzania is. It's the next one down from Kenya. It's probably the easiest way to remember it.
Yeah.
Huge country, vast country. I guess by American standards, not that big, but by European standards, a very big country. And then right up at the top corner, and I don't know if you can see, those of you who are looking at the picture, you can see that little sort of jink in the border. And the story goes that at the time when borders were being made in colonial Africa, Tanzania belonged to Germany and Kenya belonged to the UK. And Queen Victoria, who was in charge of the UK at that time, was the queen there. Her cousin, of course, was the Kaiser. And she decided to give Kilimanjaro to the Kaiser. So hence that little jink in the border that put it in what was in those days German East Africa. Obviously, then First World War, the country changed hands, became Tanzania, a protectorate of the UK, and independent in 1960. But still kept hold of Kilimanjaro, which has been rather nice. So Kilimanjaro itself, tallest freestanding mountain in the world. Freestanding means that it's not part of a mountain range because it's a volcano, and it's not even an extinct volcano, and it's a dormant volcano. So when you're on the top, I'll show you a picture later of the hole in the top that you can still smell the sulfur fumes coming out of. But the last eruption was a long time ago. So I think we're all right. But it's quite close to the Rift Valley. So the Rift Valley runs, I don't know if you can circle those. You've got Lake Manyara, another lake on there. Maybe you've got the pointer just around, a little bit up, a little bit to the left of Kilimanjaro.
Oh, yeah.
Much higher up, around there you go. So the Rift Valley runs through there. So we have got an active volcano over there, Odonya Lengai, which sits in the Rift Valley. And then right next to Arusha itself, and I'm going to show you some pictures of this one a little bit later on, we've got another dormant volcano, Mount Meru. But the tallest mountain in Africa, one of the 7 summits, and that's often quite a big draw for people coming, that they suddenly decide in life they want a bit more challenge. And the 7 summits is possibly one of the biggest challenges, physical challenges you can take on. The 7 summits being the tallest mountain in each of the 7 continents. And Kilimanjaro is pretty much the entry mountain because it's one of the easiest ones. I mean, the one in Antarctica is actually very easy to go up, but it's very hard to get to. So Kilimanjaro is much more accessible. And remember, it's wholly in Tanzania, not in Kenya at all, as the Kenyans would have you believe. But at 19th, yeah, and you can see there, that's just a zoom in of the map. We're going to be talking about some of those places. You can see there sort of in the middle at the bottom, Kilimanjaro International Airport. That's the one that most people fly in and out of. There's flights in there. KLM flies in and out of there. Ethiopian, Qatar, people like that. So Turkish. Well, they all did before COVID, but I'm sure they'll come back at some stage. And then you've got the two towns there, Arusha and Moshi, kind of equidistant between the two, the airport. I actually live in Arusha town and have done for all this time. So we've got Mount Meru, you can see there just to the north of the town, 4,566 meters, sort of looms over the town. And then in the sort of top right-hand corner there, you've got Kilimanjaro itself. The green part is the national park. So you can see both of those peaks are inside national parks.
Yeah. Well, it clearly covers a very large area. And so amazing that you have these mountains in your backyard. Living in New Hampshire, we have a lot of mountains, but none quite this large. All right. So tell us, if you want to hike Mount Kilimanjaro, let's kind of go through what you need to know to be properly prepared and properly planned. The Shira Plateau, I know, is a big deal, and we're going to talk a little bit about the different number of nights or days you can take to get up there. You want to just get us started on?
Well, yeah. So this picture here is actually taken from the Shira Plateau, and then you can see the bit of the mountain there, which is the one you've probably all seen in pictures before. And so that bit is the result of the most recent eruption. I mean, still millions of years ago, but the most recent. And that sort of massif there is called Kibo. The Shira Plateau, where this picture has been taken from, is actually we're stood on the rim of the old volcano, the one that was had a huge eruption, was disappeared. And the old volcano, based on where the rim is, they think must have been about 5 times as high as Kibo that you can see there. So a real super mountain. But anyway, blasted out, left this Shira Plateau. You've got a little bit of a rim around the edge, but mainly sort of undulating flat bit. And it's just such a beautiful place, so rarely traveled. It's a World Heritage Site. There's lots of unique flora and fauna up there. We'll find tracks of buffalo, possibly some sort of lions, maybe leopards, things like that, a bit more unusual. But absolute beautiful wilderness with hardly anybody in it.
Well, it's stunning, and I imagine it's very different in the different seasons of the year. Do you happen to know when would this one have been taken?
This one, I think, would have been just looking at the amount of snow, and you can see that there's not much snow on Kibo up there. And what there is isn't actually snow. That's the remnants of the glaciers. The glaciers, even in my time in Africa, have shrunk massively. And so that's the bit you can see kind of looks like the top. It's actually not the top. The 2 white bits there are the remnants of the northern ice fields.
Okay.
And then the top is actually over to the right-hand side, that kind of bit that sticks up. And then that's it. So the summit's actually up there. Okay. And then that ice flow running down the side there is another one of the glaciers, the sort of hanging southern glaciers that finish in a cliff.
Okay.
But there used to be a lot more, and it's going fast. And unfortunately, it's one of those things that is going to accelerate more and more as it goes. The sand that is around them is black, so it absorbs the heat really well. So you end up with a little bit of black sand showing. It gets warmer and it melts everything around it. So lots of reasons.
Yeah. Okay. So, but when should we come and hike Mount Kilimanjaro? We don't want to come when it's freezing, and we don't want to come when it's way too hot. So what are the sweet spots?
Well, you might have chosen the wrong mountain if you don't want to come when it's freezing. It's always cold up there.
It is.
But it's more a case of when not to come, as I've said here. We have rainy seasons in Tanzania. Our climate is that we have what we call the short rains, which are usually in late November, early December. But they're wouldn't worry about them too much. But the long rains are the ones that sort of set in for a couple of months, and they're in April and May, and that's when we tend to get more the sort of the overcast skies and things like that, and a bit damper. So I would say if you're planning a trip, then avoid that time of year. The rest of the year is pretty open. It obviously gets busier during traditional holiday seasons. So Christmas, August can get busier, but we'll still find somewhere pretty remote and unique for you.
Okay. Well, the good thing is you're not staying in hotels, so the hotels aren't going to sell out for you, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. Acclimatization. So you're going to a very high altitude.
That's it, and everybody says, what's the most important thing on Kilimanjaro? How fit do I need to be, and so on. And it all comes back to this acclimatization. And it's just getting your body, as you obviously go higher and higher in altitude, there's less and less oxygen in the air. So your body needs to adapt itself to be able to absorb more oxygen. And what it does is produces more red blood cells to be able to carry more oxygen, of that scarce oxygen around your body. And your body can adapt to about 1,500 foot of altitude gain per day. It varies a little bit between individuals, but that's a good average. So if you go up any faster than that, you're just trying to trick your body, and you're trying to get to the top faster than you should be. It doesn't work for most people, and it can be very dangerous as well. And you run the risk of having something quite serious either happen to your lungs or to your brain as you get fluid on it. So I would say whatever you're thinking about, whenever you're thinking of coming, then think about acclimatization and spend as long as you possibly can on the mountain to allow your body to adjust.
Do most of your travelers that you guys take up prepare themselves by hiking a lot of, steeper hikes at home before they come?
Yeah, I mean, it depends where everybody is. Everybody says, so what's the best way we can train to climb Kilimanjaro? And the answer to that is go out and climb mountains. But it's not something everybody can do. So it's just, anywhere that you can get a small rucksack on, nothing too heavy, 5 or 10 kilos in the back, and then just walk up hills. But don't forget as well to walk down hills. Everybody trains for going up, but nobody trains for going down. And you have to come just as far down as you have to go up, and a different set of muscles. So you'll see people on the way down really struggling with those quads and their knees, really killing them.
I've done some big hikes before, and I know the difference, and it does make a difference. So it's good to focus on that. Okay, the routes. When you and I were talking the other day, we talked about the range of people who might want to go for 4 days. They say, oh, I only have 4 days. I want to hike Mount Kilimanjaro. Can I do it? Your answer would likely be no.
No.
Tell us about the difference. Yeah.
So you see, I put the routes in there, and we've got the first 4 routes, which are 4 and 5 night routes. Basically, if you've only got 4 nights, pick another mountain. Find a smaller one. You're just not going to enjoy yourself. You've got a slim chance of getting to the top because of that altitude acclimatization. Again, it doesn't matter how fit you are; it can strike you down. And the best example I can think of that is seasickness. No matter how fit you are, you go on a boat and you're susceptible to seasickness, you're going to be seasick and you're going to feel awful. And altitude sickness is rather like that. You just feel awful, so seasickness, car sickness, any of those things, that sort of feeling. So we actually don't offer any of those routes. We think they're too short, and we think they're unsafe to go up that fast. So the shortest route that we'll offer is that Machami route, 6 nights. That's the one in purple, kind of in the middle at the bottom there.
Okay. Yep.
It's if you've only got 6 nights and you really want to climb the mountain, then that's obviously the one to go for. It does tend to be busier because it is the sort of the most accessible of the slightly longer routes, so it can get quite busy. So I'd say if you are going to go for that one, then maybe to avoid that Christmas and August when it can get quite hectic up there. The one that we probably take more people up than any other climbs is this Shira route, the one in yellow there. We do that either as a 7 or an 8 night. The extra night we would do as acclimatization quite high up. You would stay in the same camp for 2 nights, but you would hike a little bit higher to allow your body again to acclimatize and then come back to the same camp. But that's one of the wilderness routes, and that's the thing I think that we always try to find, is to get you away from the crowd, to give you that more sort of unique experience rather than just being in a long crocodile, like going to school, a long crocodile of people heading up the mountain. You've all seen those pictures of the top of Everest of people queuing.
Right.
Well, there's parts of Kilimanjaro on that Machami route in particular, there's a couple of bottlenecks where it can be a little bit like that you're stood in line waiting for your turn. And that's not the kind of experience we're trying to offer people.
No. And I think for most people, you know, if you go to climb Everest and you've never seen those pictures of, you know, the long trail of people, one behind the other, it's really not what you're thinking about you're going to see when you get to Everest.
No, you always think that you're going to be, I mean, a lot of the time you're just looking at that picture of one person stood on the top and you think it's just going to be me fighting against the mountain. And then some of those pictures, particularly in recent years, I think it's got more publicity, those long lines of 100 or more people queuing to get up the Hillary Step and things.
And when you and I were talking last week, I think you told me at one of the camps on the shorter routes, there could be 1,000 people more.
There could be. On one lovely August evening, you know, when this is before COVID, of course.
Yeah.
But then don't forget, it's not just the climbers. You know, we've got all the porters up there as well who are carrying the camp up and down for them. So all those guys camped, and you just end up with this massive sprawling sort of tent city up there on these more popular routes. And that's why I say this Shira route, if you're unlucky, there might be one or two other groups on there. But even then, you won't really see them during the day. And the campsites are big, so we can spread people out.
Okay, good to know. And so when you were just talking about the days and the nights, that's specific to the climbing. But then I know you also recommend spending a couple nights to acclimatize on the way up at a camp, right?
We do. So this is this picture here you can see, which for those of you who haven't got pictures, it's a small camp with a mountain behind it. The mountain behind it is Mount Meru, that one that just sort of looms over the town where I live, Arusha. And you can see this one had a catastrophic explosion again. So that whole bit where the trees are just blasted out and left this huge crater just over 500,000 years ago. But then has been sort of vegetated ever since. And now we have this tremendous lush forest growing all over the place. We have a camp up there. The camp's about 6,500 feet. And it's a great place to relax. It's a great place to acclimatize. Your body is already starting to produce those red blood cells to be more ready for your Kilimanjaro climb. And we would normally do 2 nights there. So straight off the plane up to camp. It's a very comfortable camp. You can see there large tents, all with ensuite toilets and showers and all that sort of thing. And there's some wonderful walks up through the mountain and the forest.
So you're telling me that this isn't what my camp would look like a couple days later, I take it?
No, completely different. I'm going to show you some pictures of your camp. The tents kind of shrink. It's like you've washed them.
Okay.
This is just to show you a little bit of what it looks like up there on the Shira Plateau, and it's low enough that is what's called the giant heath, and then this open moorland, and then just in the clouds in this picture, that's actually Kivo, the summit that you can see hidden. So it's quite a trek across the plateau. Mm-hmm. But remember, that's a good thing because we want to ascend slowly. We want to do that 1,500 feet of gain each day. So we need to pace ourselves to get to the top.
Mm-hmm. And I like what these people are wearing. T-shirts.
It's not too bad down there. It's quite kind of warm. And it'll, that camp, that's probably the first camp that it'll freeze a little bit at night when you're on the edge of the plateau. But by the time you get up to the camp that these guys are walking towards, then it's definitely going to be colder and you're going to have more layers on.
And I'm going to jump ahead real quick. How cold does it get at the top?
It gets, I mean, in Fahrenheit, I'm not sure. In centigrade, which is what we use,
everybody but us.
You know, it probably gets down to -4, -5, but then you've got to add the wind chiller on top of that if there's any wind at all. So it can be an apparent of sort of -10 or more.
Okay. But look at the beauty of the night sky and being out there. It's gorgeous.
So these are the tents, as you can see, smaller. These are the tents that we use. And it's always a balance between trying to give people enough room that you're not sort of squashed in like sardines. Mm-hmm. But also, the bigger the tent you have, the colder it is, that your body isn't able to warm it up at all. And they also need to be stormproof, in that we sometimes get some bad weather up there and the snow comes in. So these tents are mountain hardware tents. Mm-hmm. They've been tested and proved all over the world and are incredibly strong, will stand up to anything the weather can throw at them. But it was more as well about the fact that at this campsite here, this is Glacier campsite, I think. There's just nobody else there. There's just you looking out across that vast expanse out below you with the stars above you. And the stars, when you get that high in the mountains, just cannot believe. I mean, you think you've been to Joshua Tree or wherever and you've seen stars, but once you get up higher and you're, you know, that much higher in the atmosphere, there's less dust, there's less junk hanging around. The stars just become so bright and so incredible.
Beautiful. And I imagine it's just quiet and peaceful and, you know, a great, I mean, for me, I plan a lot of family travels. And if you have older teenagers, college kids, what an amazing experience to go and climb this mountain together.
No, it's a fantastic, either with a bunch of friends or with, as you say, family trips. But what, you know, and having that sort of common purpose and challenge is such a great bonding experience as well. So this one I popped on because I think this is what we think is the perfect way to climb Kilimanjaro. So before this, we think the 2 nights in that camp in Arusha National Park, the one at 6,500 feet, will be a great way to get off the plane, get some acclimatization in, but also you're kind of, it's exclusive use. All these camps are exclusive use. There's nobody else there with you. And it gives you time to kind of focus, get over the flight, the jet lag, the whatever it is, and really focus on the challenge ahead and get together. So this climb is, you know, one of the problems on Kilimanjaro is none of the routes have real sort of official names because you can do it so many ways. So I've said the start in Lemosho Glades, which is in the forest still, not up on the mountain yet. And then you're going to ascend across the Shura Plateau, that World Heritage Site we talked about, and then up the Western Breach, up onto the top. So day one, half day, so drop you off just before lunch. I guess we have to go to the gate and sign in. It's a national park and they need to register all your names and things for safety. And then we'll bring you around to the trailhead and hike up. We'll stop and we'll have lunch on the way. And lunch on the way is a bit of an event. You know, it's not just a sandwich that you picked up at the convenience store on your way there. We'll set up tables and chairs. If the weather's nice, if it's not, we'll put a tent up or something to keep you out of the weather. And we'll put a great spread out there. Because remember, the whole thing's meant to be fun. You know, a lot of people sort of picture it as this trudging up this massive hill. But, you know, this is your holiday. You're meant to be enjoying yourself. So there's always time to sit, to chat, to talk to the people who are on the mountain with you. So then carry on for the afternoon to your first camp in the forest. So it's not going to be cold. It's not going to freeze that night. So it's a sort of a gentle introduction. There'll be a great orientation from the leader who will show you what you need to know about the camp, how it all works. The next day, day 2, is actually a bit of a long one in terms of distance you cover. Still the same altitude gain, but a little bit further along. And you'll weave your way up some of those valleys on the slopes, the outside slopes of the Shira Plateau until just before you get to camp. You pop over that ridge, and that's probably when you're going to get your first view close up of Kibo and the summit, and you'll know what you're aiming for. So camp there that night. Next day, that picture we saw earlier of people walking across the plateau, and then up one of the bigger drainages on that side of the mountain, on the western side of the mountain, up this huge valley. And then you're actually going to camp again at the top of the valley by the ruins of an old mountain hut. Next day, a bit of a shorter day. We're climbing up over past something called the Shark's Tooth, which always sounds wonderful, but it really is just one of these sort of remnants like this that looks just like a shark's tooth. And these are all subsidiary cones that have been eroded away. And so you're actually going to camp that night at a place called Lava Tower, which has another lava plug right next to it. If you get there early enough, you've got the energy, it's quite a fun climb. Get up to the top and look out from the top a couple of 100 feet high. Next day, really short day. And it probably only going to take you a couple of hours, but it's quite steep. So again, we're still looking for that similar altitude gain. We don't want to go any further, even though we could. We've got time in the day, and we're actually going to stop there. So an early day, so probably a little bit later start, earlier finish, and then in the afternoon, rest and prepare, because the next day we've got quite a challenge heading up the Western Breach. And so there's only really 3 ways to get up onto the top bit of Kili. This is one of them, the Western Breach. And the other one is around the other side. That Machame route goes up one from a camp called Barafu, which translates into ice from Swahili. And then the other one is up from Marengo on the Kibo side. So that's just that short route that we're talking about, the 4-night one. Mm-hmm. The Western Breach gets mixed reviews. There was a rockfall there in 2006 that killed some climbers. The route was closed for a while. But since then, we and a bunch of other tour operators and national parks went up there and we realigned the route completely. So it now takes a much safer route in the lee of a large lava flow. So those rocks that come down, remember, the rocks are coming down on every route. They just happen to kill somebody on that route, but all the other routes are rocks coming down as well. Okay. But the nice thing about that Western Breach route is it pops you out into that summit crater. And then if you've got the energy, and I hope you do, then it's wonderful to go and explore the crater. You can hike over to the ash pit in the middle, which is that hole we were talking about in the top with the faint smell of sulfur still coming out, and just explore around there. There's the Furtwängler Glacier, and that picture is actually one of the remnants. They almost look like sort of old galleons stranded on the top there, these huge bits of ice that are just gradually melting away to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And then last one. So then a camp up there as well, which is a fantastic night to camp so high. It's not going to be sleeping in a feather bed, and you're not going to get a straight 8 hours of sleep. You're up very high. Your body is adjusting. It's cold up there, but boy, is it a memorable night. And that's what we're about. We're about trying to create those memories. And it's just the experience of camping up there right next to a glacier, looking out, and it feels you can walk to the edge and look out, and it feels like you're looking out over the whole of Africa. Really is an incredible feeling.
That sounds amazing. My understanding is too that with the different lengths of trips, some of them make it so that you are not able to summit early in the morning, and others of those do, the longer ones do. Could you tell us a little bit about the difference between the two?
Yeah. So this route that I'm talking about now, then we've got on day 7, the summit day. And so from that high camp in the crater, it's only a few hundred feet up to the summit. So normally wake up in the daylight. It takes you a lot longer to get ready at that stage. So fiddle about getting your boots and your clothes on, have something to eat, and then just a short hike up to the summit and feel reasonably fresh up there and able to sort of enjoy that feeling of euphoria of reached the top. Yeah. All the other routes, you start from much, much lower down, and you have a huge slog overnight. So usually starting, depending on the speed of your group, so starting between midnight and 2 o'clock in the morning, and you've got your head torch on, shining a little beam in front of you, and that becomes your world for the next 6 to 7 hours, trudging uphill on these huge ski slopes to get to the top. And the aim for all these groups is to get to the top at dawn, and then turn around and head back down again. But a lot of them arrive much later than that, but absolutely exhausted and not really able to comprehend what they've got.
So I think that is an important point to note. First of all, waking up teenagers or college kids at 2 a.m. to go for a slog hike up, 6-7 hours at this altitude would not be a pleasant experience. They might just say, no, just come and get me on the way down. That is great. I love the overview, and it's great to know. And obviously people will know more details before they go, what each day is going to be like. This is an easy day. This is a steep day. This is a long day. This is a short day. So that's the value of having your expertise. I'm curious actually to know, how many times has your team summited up Kilimanjaro approximately?
The company, oh my goodness, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. We have groups going up and down like yo-yos. So plenty of times, plenty of experience.
Okay. Well, good to know. And I think you and I touched on before, and we'll talk a little bit about all the different things relative to the outfitter that you choose. And one of them is your guide. And I loved hearing that all of your guides are from Tanzania.
That's right. When we started running trips up Kilimanjaro sort of 30 plus years ago, we had a lot of Western guys that we would fly in for a climb or 2 or 3 climbs. Just because there wasn't really the sort of that international, there were always people who could lead you up there, but they didn't really have the depth of experience that a sort of world-class mountaineer would have. We've invested a lot of time and energy and money in our leaders over the last 30 years. And we now have some absolutely incredible guys who will, many of them, our guys, have traveled abroad and led trips in other countries. So they don't just know this mountain, but they really understand mountaineering. And I think that's one of the important things, that you've got someone who's got that depth of experience. Actually, if you pop it onto the next slide, there's a few things there. That's, some of the questions you should be asking your outfitter is, the guy, he's going to be the main person who's going to be leading your group up there. And it's how long has he been guiding on the mountain? How long has he been on the mountain? And all our guides will have started much lower down the pecking order, either as porters themselves or perhaps coming in at a much, much lower level, and then work their way up, so that even if they've only had sort of 10 or 15 ascents as a guide, that they've had another 20 or 30 or 40 ascents as at some other position. Mm-hmm. So number of ascents is a key one as well. And again, looking at the route that you're planning to choose up on the mountain, ask how many times your guide has been up that particular route. In that, it might be that short 4-day route, he's been up and down that like a yo-yo, but has actually never been to the wilderness side of the mountain that we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. Then we come on to something called WFR, which stands for Wilderness First Responder. And Wilderness First Responder is a first aid certification. It's fast becoming the world standard first aid certification. It involves a 10-day, 2-week intensive course and touches on a lot more detail than you would get in a normal first aid course, because what it's designed for is that somebody who's going to help save your life, not just for the 15 minutes till the ambulance arrives, but possibly for 2 or 3 days while you're evacuated off the mountain. So it looks a lot more in depth rather than just stop the blood and call 911 or 999, depending on what country you're in. So that's the thing, that the certification is valid for 2 years. And then after that, they have to recertify. So again, a question to ask would be, how many times are they recertified? So are they someone who's just got the qualification, or there's someone who's had it for a number of years and had to restudy and study again and do the recertification? The recertification is also a 4-day course. Then the other one would be to find if they've climbed elsewhere apart from Kilimanjaro. It's very much a temptation to have a guide that's only climbed on Kilimanjaro, who only knows that narrow trail up and down the mountain, isn't really aware of the bigger picture, perhaps, about the things that can go wrong. And it's like all these people, it's all very well. It's like an airline pilot. Why do they get paid all that money? They get paid all that money to sit around doing nothing, because the plane pretty much flies itself. But they get paid all that money for when things go wrong. And that's the same with your guide. You want a guide who can, is a nice guy when things are going well, but you want a guide who can really sort you out and help you out when things start to go wrong. And on the mountains, things do go wrong. Things change from time to time, whether that's the weather or the altitude, so many other factors. Mm-hmm. And then the last one I've listed there, which is one of the requirements that our guides have to meet before they become a guide for us, is that they have to have traveled outside Tanzania. That they're not only your guide up and down the mountain, but they're also your traveling companion. They're going to be sat eating every meal with you for the next 8 to 10 days. And you want someone who you can have a conversation with, who, when you talk about, the fact that I-95 came to a standstill because of the crash and you were stuck there for 6 hours, they can kind of comprehend what you're talking about. That they've been to some of the big cities in the West, so our guys have to have been either to Europe or North America, just to experience the wider world, really. And we think that gives them a really good insight into your life, and helps them to be a better guide as well.
I love that. Well, clearly there's a lot of thought and intention and investment on your part in your guides and in your porters and in your people, that make a huge difference in the quality of somebody's experience when they're up there. So that's important. And you've touched on safety, but there's a lot of things that people like me don't even think about, that we pay people like you to think about for us. You want to tell us a little bit about those?
Well, these are, again, just some of the things that you should be asking about. We've talked about the guide, and I've got there a ratio of a minimum of 1 guide to 3 clients. And that guide, you want to really push whoever you're working with to find out more about those guides. The certification to be a guide, a certified guide, a licensed guide on Kilimanjaro, the bar is pretty low. And so you want to be having somebody who is much more skilled than that. And again, each of these guides that you're working up should have a current WFR certificate. And the reason that you need all those guys is that, one person gets sick on the mountain and they have to be evacuated. Well, maybe your main guy is going to have to go down with that casualty, because that's the most serious issue at the moment. Mm-hmm. And so suddenly you're left up on the mountain there with number 2 or number 3 guide, and you want to make sure that they're they're equally as qualified to carry you on off and to take care of your safety. I've gone the head guide again, recertified a minimum of 2 times on their WFR. That just means that they've got a bit more experience under their belt, that this knowledge, this first aid knowledge really has been drummed into them. The team should carry with them, this is the team on the mountain, a gamble bag and oxygen. So the bottom left picture there, you can see an oxygen cylinder. And so that's not really, you know, on Everest again, you see people with their oxygen bottles and they've got their thing on up their nose or over their mouth to help them get to the top. We don't use that on Kilimanjaro. The oxygen isn't to help you go any higher. The oxygen is to help you if you get sick, you know, and that altitude sickness, if you've ascended too fast, or just, you know, sometimes some people get it, you know, 1 in 100, 1 in 200 people which won't acclimatize as well as others. That oxygen is there to give you that extra boost to help you get down. A gamble bag's a bit of a funny one. So that top right picture, the red sausage there, and the best way to kind of describe it is if you imagine an inflatable boat and you took off one of the sides of the inflatable boat, you chopped it off, and then you closed off that open end, and now you have a sort of a rubber tube, if you like. It's got a zip on it. And what happens is if somebody's suffering from altitude sickness again, you pop them inside, you close the zip up, and then you have a foot pump. And you pump it until the whole of the inside is pressurized again like that inflatable boat. And by doing that, you artificially lower the altitude inside because you're increasing the concentration of oxygen in the air. So it allows whoever's in there to breathe much more easily. You can see there, they're sort of pretending to carry someone. And I mean, in theory, you can carry someone in one of these, but if we're honest, it's incredibly cumbersome to try and carry someone and they end up slipping and sliding around inside. So what we would tend to do is to pop somebody in there, pump them up with a foot pump, and you have somebody constantly pumping to bring fresh air in all the time, and a bleed valve that it goes back out, so you're getting lots of oxygen. And then you would stay in there for 1, 2, 3, 4 hours until you start to feel better, and then they would take you out of there, and a couple of people would support you and go down. If you start feeling bad, you just stop and pop back in again. There's no rush at that stage.
Well, I never heard
other things I've got on there,
but I'm glad you know about them. Obviously, I mean, it reminds me a little bit of the look of someone being carried off a mountain, for example, like on the back of a snowmobile. But there are no snowmobiles up there to carry you down the mountain. So
no snowmobiles. They do have the national parks has in a couple of places stretchers a little bit lower down the mountain, and they're quite fun. They have one big sort of motorbike wheel in the middle and lots of shock absorbers, so it can so you have 4 people sort of balancing it, but some of the weight's taken by the wheel, so they don't actually have to carry you all the way.
Got it. And then
what's the next thing I've got on there? I've got satellite phone and walkie-talkies. The satellite phone, obviously, you know, it's there for emergencies to get a message out. We used to carry HF radios, big cumbersome things, and it's have to have 2 guys holding an antenna up and communicate to the base. But now we have satellite phones, much easier, much more compact, and much more reliable. And then walkie-talkies within the group, in that, you know, people don't always walk at the same speed. And it's a little bit constricting if you're someone who likes to stride out, but your partner or your kids want to dawdle a little bit and stop and sort of smell the roses, as it were. And it's important that the group can communicate from the back to the front, because you've had one of the guides and the fast walker head on up to camp or to lunch, and then suddenly there's a problem at the back of the group that they need to be able to call them back to help. And then the last one I've written there is that it's all very good, this training, to do it in a nice warm classroom down at the bottom of the mountain, but you should also question whoever your outfitter is as to when they last went on the mountain, did multi-day training. So I mean, some of these pictures you can see here are some of our guides up on the mountain, and we'll head up there every year and do sort of several days up there with different scenarios. That suddenly there'll be someone who's simulating the symptoms of altitude sickness, or we'll have someone that's got suddenly a rock's toppled over and crushed their foot, or somebody who's got hypothermia, and actually make the guys realize how hard it is, you know, that you're trying to bandage someone's leg, but your fingers are so cold they won't work, and things like that, in sort of real world training.
Okay, another obviously big investment. Well, I'm going to keep us moving to make sure that we touch on all of the slides that we want, or topics that we want to talk about. I know a big thing for some people is, what will my camp be like? This one on the bottom left looks a little different. I prefer the one on the top right. One's covered in snow and the other has a beautiful meadow with a blue sky.
Well, you know, I popped that bottom left one in just to sort of show you that there is a temptation that some outfitters will try and offer you huge tents that you can walk into, and beds and things like that. And our feeling is that that's not the right way to go, because those tents just won't survive some of the storms up there. Mm-hmm. And that you're far better to be in a smaller, more robust tent. So as I say, we'll put you in these mountain hardware tents. Private toilets. It's something everybody wonders, but nobody likes to ask about. And I don't know if you can see on that top right picture, there's kind of at the right hand edge of it. That's it, right there. That's it, the throne room. So one of the porters, one of the many porters, is going to be carrying up a toilet, and we use those sort of RV style flush toilets up on the mountain. So his job is to carry it up there and sort of set it up for you, but also to keep sort of servicing it and make sure it stays clean. And one of the challenges as you go higher up, obviously, is that the water in the flush tank starts to freeze. So he has to keep popping some warm water in there. We don't want to use any antifreeze or anything like that, because it's bad for the environment up there. So he keeps popping warm water in. So that's an important thing. The national parks does have toilets in the campsites, but quite frankly, they're not somewhere you want to go at all.
Okay. And I hope you pay that porter a lot of money. He deserves
You know, that porter is a really interesting one, because that role, that toilet porter, we actually call them toilet porters, is the first rung on the ladder of promotion. So there's lots of normal porters, but anyone who you see that little spark in their eye, and you think, you know, this guy might go all the way, then that's the first test, is they become a toilet porter. They get paid a bit more money, and they have a bit more responsibility. And that's probably the first time that they come into more direct contact with the clients as well. A lot of the other guys are sort of carrying the kitchen tent or carrying the gas bottles or whatever, and don't really see people. And so they'll move up into that, and hopefully onwards and upwards out of that role as well.
Okay.
Next one I've got there is mess tent. You know, you just need to have somewhere to get out of the weather, particularly in the evenings. And it just gets colder and colder and windier and possibly stormier and stormier. And so a mess tent, something that's strong. We've tried all sorts of things. We've bought, again, those fancy sort of geometric domes or whatever, geodesic domes. And we've actually come back to heavy weight, and they really are heavy, sort of ripstop canvas tents that we haul up there with steel poles. And they get guyed out and tied to rocks and all sorts of things. But it means that we've got a lovely big space in there. We take tables and chairs up, because, you know, you don't want to be sitting on the floor eating all the time. And then we'll make sure we have fantastic food. And that's important for people as well. You know, a lot of it's about that sort of shared time, sitting around, sharing meals together, having time to talk over things. I popped in there porter tents as well. I mean, one of the things to ask is whether there are enough porter tents, sleeping tents, for all the porters. Something that some of the more cut rate companies will do is that they will say that, you know, you 8 or 10 porters, you guys are going to sleep in the mess tent, which is fine until you realize that those guys are stood outside shivering while you're lingering over your meal, and you end up with this terrible feeling of guilt the whole time. So it's important that they have their own tents to sleep in, and not be going into the mess tent.
I agree with you. That does sound terrible, and something you might not know before you head up there. One of my favorite things I learned from you is about how many porters it takes to take a family up to the top, which, when you consider all the things you just mentioned, and someone has to carry them, and it's not the travelers who are carrying all the stuff, it's a lot of people. Tell us. It is
a huge number of people, and people don't quite realize. So porters are reasonably well regulated up on Kilimanjaro, and one of the key numbers up there is the amount that they're allowed to carry, that they can't be overburdened. So you do end up with an awful lot of porters up there, because don't forget, you don't just have the porter that's carrying the food and the cooking gas for your meal. You also have to have a porter carrying the food and cooking gas for the porter who's carrying the cooking gas for you. And so it just goes on exponentially. So ask about the number of porters that there would be on the trip for any number of clients. And I think we've got some example numbers a little bit later on. They'll give you an idea of those. But then talk also. Oh, there we go. That's a team there for 4 VIP clients. This was last week or the week before. This team was up on the mountain.
Okay.
So that gives you a little bit of an idea how many people you need to support that many people up on the mountain.
It's a lot of people.
But if we could just go back one slide,
yeah,
a couple more points on there. There's an organization called KPAP, which is a Kilimanjaro Porters Assistance Project. We were founder members of, set up a long time ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago now. And their role is to try and improve the lot of porters on Kilimanjaro. So it's important, whoever you choose, make sure they're a member of that organization. You can Google them and they've got a list of who's a member and who's not there. But then also ask about sort of training and development opportunities for the porters. You know, some of these guys are happy to be porters, you know, and a lot of them have other jobs. It's a bit of a seasonal job. So they'll have a small farm or something, and then they'll just happy to go and porter and earn some money to keep them going. But others, you know, they've got that little spark that I talked about in their eye, and they've got potential, and whether they're given the opportunity to grow that potential. Whether they adhere to porter weight limits, this is something that Parks tries to administer. All the loads are weighed at the gate on their way up, but there are always ways around these things. So do make sure that they're adhering to those weight limits, and that the porters are properly equipped. You know, sadly, some porters go up there and they think it's some guys think it's easy money. They'll just go and carry a bag up to the top of the mountain and back down again. They don't have the right equipment to keep them safe and healthy up there. So make sure that there's something's done. And there's places these porters can go, and for a very nominal amount can hire this Kilimanjaro Porters Assistance Project, KPAP. Have a rental store that for peanuts, really. These guys can rent equipment to keep them warm and dry up there.
Okay.
And then finally, that they're properly accommodated and fed, that they're getting enough food during the day, and they're burning a phenomenal amount of energy. These guys, you will be amazed at them. You'll be there in all your sort of fancy North Face down jackets and whatever, struggling with your tiny little rucksack, and these guys with a much bigger, they'll carry 20 kilos of your stuff and then 4 kilos of their own, 24 kilo weight limit, that they'll come storming past you, sort of whistling and trotting as they go. So a lot of respect for those guys. They're very tough guys.
Absolutely. You want to have good people supporting you on your hike up, that's for sure.
So there's some ideas of numbers there. So this is for a standard climb, not the VIP climb. Okay. So 2 clients, you're going to have 25 porters carrying your stuff up there. Can you believe it?
No.
But don't forget that ratio gets better as you go on. So because, you know, that safety equipment, the oxygen we talked about, the gamel bag, the toilet, all those things, they need to go up. Even for one person, all that kit has to go up there. But then if you have 16 people, it still only has, I mean, obviously there's more toilets, but you don't all have to share the same toilet. But that gives you an idea. So you get up to a group of 16 clients, you've got a team of 94 porters. So it's quite the management issue, you know, that somebody has got to manage those guys and make sure that they've all got the right amount of kit and nothing gets left behind and nobody's getting left with a bigger load than the other people. So it's quite, and that they all get fed and they all get a fair share of the food, that they all get somewhere warm and dry to sleep.
I have a question I just thought of.
Okay.
I'm curious the answer. Are there any female porters?
Very, very few is the answer. And I think that sort of culturally, it's perceived as more of a man's job. There are no restrictions about it. You know, any women can go up and do it. And there are a few of them. And I think if you'd asked me that question 5 years ago, I'd have said none. So it's a growing number. Growing number.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously super hard, you know, on your body and all of that. So you have to be well prepared to even attempt it. I imagine if there are some, or whoever they are, that they get very well respected for sure.
They're very well respected. And what we tend to do is, if we have a list of porters who are kind of approved by us, and then we'll rotate through that list. But then if somebody has somebody new, then they have to be sponsored by one of our not top leaders, but someone who's sort of worked for us for a while, that they'll vouch for somebody. And then the first time we'll send them up and they don't carry a load. They just walk along, and we feed them and accommodate them and so on. And that's just to make sure they can make it. And then the second time they'll get a light load, and then we'll see if they make it. Third time they get a proper load, and then if they sort of pass that one, we get a report back from everybody, from the guide to the assistant guides to the cook, as to how willing they are to work. And what we need is someone who if the wind starts blowing and the head guide says go out and check the guy ropes, they jump up and they go and do it. They don't say, no, I'm snuggled up in bed, find somebody else.
Yeah.
So we're looking for guys who'll go the extra mile.
All right. Well, I know we talked a little bit about sort of how to prepare for it. I'm going to skip over this one for now because people can look at the video and go through it themselves just to keep us on task. You talked a little bit about the VIP option, which includes having more porters and I think carrying less for individuals, which sounds like a great option to me. I'll take that one. And then let's go over a little bit about, we've touched a little bit about life on the mountain. Are there other things you want to add to kind of what people should expect during their days?
Well, I think just that, the aim is to make it as nice as we possibly can. So you can see that top left side is the guys who come around in the morning while you're still snuggled up in your sleeping bag and bring you a cup of tea or coffee or whatever floats your boat at that time in the morning.
Guys. Those are my favorite guys.
And also a bowl of hot water. One of the things everybody says is, will there be showers up on the mountain? And you'll find, if you go and look on the internet, you'll find some company that will say, sure, we'll take a shower up there. Because they're absolutely certain that nobody's going to have a shower up there. Can you imagine in that sort of temperature, taking all your clothes off and getting wet? So what we do instead is that whenever you want, so usually evening and first thing in the morning, we'll bring you a bowl of piping hot water, and then you have a flannel, and you give yourself a sort of a sponge bath, like they sort of do in the hospitals, that you expose a little bit of your body one by one, and you clean that bit, and then you put it in, get it dressed again, and keep it warm. But it's not always like that. If you look at that next picture over on the top, that guy sat outside his tent with his trouser legs rolled up and his boots off. That's actually in the crater camp. So that guy is camped at over 18,500 feet. And it's not always cold and miserable up there. It's just a great place to be. That next one, keeping going further right, with the guys stood next to what looks like a tree, are these giant senecio, which are a pretty unique plant that grows up on the edge of the Shira Plateau down in the Barranco Valley. They're pretty fun. So, and again, our guides will be showing you all sorts of flora and fauna and really very knowledgeable about it. The geology of the mountain and what's happening where. They're not just a mountain guide, they're a guide as well.
Yeah.
Oh, look, there we got some more pictures of it there. So those are the giant senecios again. Oh, it's actually the same guy stood next to the same tree. And but you can see the different bands that you go through with different vegetation, different bands before you get up to that sort of Arctic layer in the top. And that's up in the crater again with those lumps of ice that go around there.
And I love how you wrote, it's not just about the summit. It's a perfect example of the quote, right? It's not about the destination, it's the journey.
It's about the journey. It's making that journey as enjoyable as we possibly can. It's hard work every day and you've got to walk uphill a long way, but it doesn't mean it has to be sort of drudgery. This is actually a picture of that hole in the top. Isn't that amazing? That's amazing. In the top of Kili. But people ask us about preparation. We talked about that a little bit already. And the best way is to walk up hills as much as you can. But we always say that anybody can get to the top of Kili. It's not so much you need a certain level of fitness, but you really don't have to be desperately fit. 99% of it's up here. It's about the mental preparedness, the willing to sort of keep pushing yourself when things get a little bit tough. And so we've taken some desperately unfit people up there, and they've struggled, but we've taken them up there. You really are rushing me along here, Mimi. Am I running out of time? I can feel it's like the second hand is going faster and faster.
Well, I prepared you for that. I said you and I
told you I need 2 hours. I need 2 hours.
We could talk for 6 hours, but not everybody else has 6 hours. But
so this is just to give you some examples now of price. And you can, the thing I'll say to you is you can always find something cheaper on the internet. And the thing I would say to you about this, it's, not all Kilimanjaro climbs are the same. And it's when you go out to buy a car, you can go out and buy yourself a Rolls Royce, or you can go out and buy yourself a Skoda. You know, they're both cars, but they're very, very different experiences. And so what we try to offer is that special private trip experience. Mm-hmm. And that the number obviously gets cheaper as you have more people, because there are some fixed costs, the guide, you know, the porters carrying all that safety equipment. Mm-hmm. But that gives you some ideas. And then the VIP options that we talked about, 1,000 little extra things that we do to make it more fun, make it more interesting, and make it more comfortable for you.
I'm doing that one, just so you know.
You're doing that one. We've got you booked in already. Don't worry. Next time we'll have pictures of you up there.
I want the VIP one. That's what I want. I think, you know, for people who have no idea what it costs, this is so helpful just to get a comparison. Yeah. First of all, you know, from if you did it shorter, would it be less expensive? Absolutely. I think this is a very good example of you get what you pay for. You can find something online that's a lot less expensive, but all those things that you were talking about, from safety and comfort and guides and porters, like, you don't know the difference between what that is and what this is. So,
well, and that was the hope, that you know, even if you are going to go for something a little bit cheaper, that hopefully this will help you ask the right questions. Yeah. And do your own maths. You know, ask them to break out the park fees for you, and then compare them with someone else's. You know, you'll find people out there offering Kilimanjaro climbs for less than the cost of the park fees. Well, there's just something not right there. So just don't. So you show up, don't take every deal.
Says you have to pay for your park fees, right? So you know, not super fun surprises. We love to be surprised, but we always like them to be happy, delightful surprises.
We do happy surprises. But it's just, Kilimanjaro is such a fantastic mountain. So I really encourage all of you. Everybody should go and climb Kilimanjaro. Everybody listening to this is capable of doing it. I think our oldest is sort of 89 or 90-year-old chap we took up there, and he made it to the top and back down again. So everybody can do it. It's just such a rewarding experience. You know, it's not always going to be easy, but it's always going to be fun.
Absolutely. And again, with kids, you have teenagers and college kids, you know, who play sports in high school and college. Like, these people are ripe to do something like this. The accomplishment and the sense of accomplishment you get from doing it. Yeah, is amazing. And the quality of time with your family. So good stuff. You're the best. I loved it. This is excellent. So much fun to learn about hiking up there, and to hear more about your company and the focus that you have on developing your people and keeping them local. Like, it's just all such great information, so that people know this is the standard that's out there. And, you know, it's one that you can have if you hike up with you guys. So thank you.
Fantastic. I've enjoyed it. We're too short, but I've enjoyed it.
Sure. We'll do another one. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Richard. And we will be in touch. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.